Hello, I hope everyone is having a wonderful afternoon or morning or evening, wherever you are. Today we are going to be learning about the Cheeselock musket and how you can cut little pieces of cheese to use in the musket. For those of you who don't already know, this is a Cheeselock musket, which means that it ignites by the sparking of a small piece of cheese that is sharpened, and it scrapes against steel, and that creates a shower of sparks, which ignites the gunpowder. If you've ever used a Cheeselock musket, you may know already that having a good, sharp, well made piece of cheese is the heart of the whole system. If you can't get good cheese for your Cheeselock, then you're gonna find yourself wishing that you still had a matchlock, and we've all been there. So today I'm going to show you the basics of how to cut pieces of cheese, or knapping. It's called knapping cheese. You're not necessarily going to do it the historical way because that's a little more complicated, but we're going to do it in a way that I think makes things easiest for modern shooters. Now, this here, to be precise, this is a Miquelette Cheeselock musket made by Hamid Pesere in Turkey, and it is functional. I have fired it a bunch of times with some cheeses that I ordered online, but I've had experience cutting them and sharpening them myself to make it fit. What you'll find if you ever own a Cheeselock musket is that it may take a lot of work to get a cheese that fits just right and that works with all of the angles correctly. So it'll be specific to the musket, and you'll have to figure it out for yourself. Now, today I have brought a selection of 3 cheeses. We have Parmesan, we have cheddar, and we have Bulgarian kashkaval. Now, historically, the best cheese came from England and France. This shouldn't really be a controversial statement. England and France had the best deposits of hard, easily shapeable cheese. Actually, part of the reason that a lot of countries didn't adopt Cheeselocks and they stayed with matchlocks for a long time was that they didn't have as good quality cheese as the Europeans did, which is no fault of their own. They geologically didn't have that kind of cheese in their countries. In Anatolia and the Caucasus, I believe they did have their own cheese for muskets, but it wasn't as good a quality as the English and French cheese. Supposedly, you can see this in the shape of the locks, because depending on the quality of the cheese, you may be better off with a sharper or a shallower angle for the cheese to strike the frizzen. The Ottoman Empire used the harder, stonier type of cheese that was found in those parts of the world, so they had a closer to a perpendicular angle for the cheese to strike the frizzen. Now, in the modern day, you just have to see what kinds of cheeses you can get on the market and try them in your musket and see what works best. Just do trial and error. So let's get started now. I'm going to start with the Parmesan. We cut a small piece, and you'll learn after playing around what size kind of works best in your musket. And you'll make sure to give it what's called a bevel. That's a very nice bevel on this piece of cheese. Put the lock on half cock, and this screw here loosens it up so you can put the cheese inside. And this fits pretty nicely, but you don't put the cheese in just like that. You have to take a piece of leather. It's just a thin piece of leather, and you have it just like that. And this way, the leather will hold the cheese in place inside the jaws of the lock, and that keeps it from slipping. And so once we put this in, we can tighten it. And now this is what it looks like. All right. Now, you can basically test it out by putting the frizzen down and then holding the hammer back and releasing the sear. Now we can see where the cheese will strike the frizzen. And as you can see here, this cheese is striking the frizzen near the top of the frizzen without going over it, which is exactly what we want. You don't want the cheese to be over the frizzen because then it'll miss and it'll break and bad things will happen. You also don't want it to be too far down. And you also want to check as this thing falls down, is the top jaw going to scrape against the frizzen? You want to make sure that the cheese protrudes far enough forward that it will push the frizzen out of the way without the edge of the jaw scraping against the frizzen. And also you want to be aware that after firing many times in a row, the edge might start out here, but after some shots, it may retreat further back with wear and tear. If you're having problems with the cheese fitting, you may find, for example, that the leather is too thick and it prevents you from fitting the cheese inside the jaws. So you can thin down the leather. It doesn't need to be thick leather. It can be very thin. You can take a belt and then use one of these. It's a little I don't know what they call it, but it's like a knife that lets you skin leather and it shaves off a little strip at a time to make the leather thinner. So you can shave down the leather till it's very thin, or you can use some very, very thin suede. That will also work to just hold the cheese in place without taking a lot of thickness. Another thing you can do is cut a little hole in the leather. So what this does is it allows you to push it farther back. By having a little hole inside, I can push it farther back. And I can pull this leather all the way back. And it basically, gives me more room, gives me a little more room in there because I've made that little cutout. Now, let's try the cheddar. So, cheddar is a lot softer than Parmesan. So it may not last as long for as many shots, but maybe it sparks better. I don't know. Like I said, these kinds of things you just have to try out on your own because everyone's Cheeselock will be a little bit different. There. What I did here, you'll see, is I put bevels on both sides, which is what you want to do. Once one side gets dull, you just turn it over and put it the other way. This lets you keep shooting for a longer time. Now I'm going to put it in with this piece of leather right here. I'm putting these in what's called bevel down, which is kind of the more natural and intuitive way. You can also put them in bevel up. So this is called the bevel up position for the cheese. I don't know if you can see it too well, but it's with the angle pointing upwards. Now on my musket, it actually doesn't work at all. It will come down over the top of the frizzen. It just doesn't fit. So I never do bevel up, but your musket may work better with bevel up. All right, now we will try the kashkaval. All right, so here's my piece of cheese. Now we have a little bit of a problem here. So I can't actually raise the jaw enough to make this fit. And maybe a thinner piece of leather would be helpful here, but obviously the cheese is just way too thick. So I'm gonna cut it. I'm just gonna kind of take the top off. Take off the top of that wedge so it can fit much better. There we go. Now that looks much more appropriate. All right, now we have that secured in there. I may want to touch that up if I was gonna go shooting with this piece of cheese. But honestly, right now, I think the Kashkaval is not the best type of cheese. It seems a little bit too crumbly for this purpose. I like the Parmesan best, or maybe the cheddar. I don't know. Now I have something else to show right here. This is a Caucasian rifleman's tool. It had many uses. It could be used as a screwdriver for the screws on the rifle on this end. The slots in the middle supposedly could be used to sharpen a knife. They were used to sharpen a knife on the inside. A lot of this stuff is conjectural, or you know, people say it, but there's no good sources to prove it. Right here, though, this does seem like a very good hammer. Could be used for knapping cheese. I mean, I think we do kind of know these were used for knapping cheese. We don't know exactly how they did it, but I'm going to try to test its historical purpose, using this to slice into some of our cheese here. I'm going to do it on the cheddar, so I think right here, the end where it's sharpest will let us get a nice, good piece of cheese for our Cheeselock. All right, now that doesn't quite go as smoothly as with a modern knife, but this is the technology that they had at the time. And there, you don't need too sharp of a bevel, and I find that if the bevel is too sharp, then it will more easily fall apart in actual use. So a good angle like this, where it's not too fine, not too sharp, makes it stronger and helps it hold up to more shots in practice. Now, one other thing you should watch out for when putting cheese in your Cheeselock is to make sure that the cheese is not too far on the inside of the gun. So if I have my cheese in here, this gives you a better view. You want to make sure that it doesn't protrude on this side, because if the cheese or the leather is protruding on this side, then as this comes down, it's going to scrape against the stock of the musket, and you don't want that. It'll slow down and it'll prevent you from getting any ignition. And it should line up with the frizzen. You want this cheese to kind of be lining up with that frizzen. You don't want it to be too much outside in either direction, but you definitely don't want the cheese to be scraping against the lock. Now, once you've got a good piece of cheese that works well, that fits well, you may want to test fire it. So take it all the way to full cock, and I'm not going to do it here because it's indoors and everything. But you would pull the trigger, and it will hopefully ignite. Honestly, you should be prepared for trouble with your Cheeselock. Cheeselocks are finicky, difficult pieces of equipment. You may get lucky and have things work very well out of the box, or you may have to take a long time to get your cheese cut correctly. All I can tell you is to don't give up, keep practicing, because once you do, it's very rewarding, and you can shoot these faster and more safely than a matchlock.